Hey guys, so originally, whoops, you're in my boobies. I really just want to talk about some of my favorite plants right now and why these are some of my favorite plants at the moment. My favorite plants do change, I would say seasonally. Different plants do better or worse depending on the season, you know? Even inside a house, the temperature changes, the lighting changes, all sorts of different little environment things change season to season. These are the plants that I find myself gravitating toward this spring season because they are growing exceptionally well, better than the rest. I would love if you left a comment of what some of your favorite spring growers are and why they're your favorites. I love a good plant recommendation, so I will be taking all of those comments down below into account for my next plant purchase. And thank you. I have to start this list off with Syngonium albo. Oh, where do I begin? Y'all know I love Syngoniums as it is, but this one especially, just something about a lot of Syngonium varieties is they tend to die back or especially noticeably slow down growth-wise during the winter time, during the cold months, because they aren't super tolerant of cold. Me neither. Maybe that's why I like Syngonium so much. We get along. We have a lot in common. We hate the cold. My Syngonium albo has lived down in my basement all through the cold winter months, and my basement is just concrete, so it gets really, really cold down here. Through the winter months, a lot of my plants, Syngonium especially, tend to slow down or even die back. They will kill off a whole bunch of leaves during the cold months. It's kind of stressful, but it's all worth it, especially for my Syngonium albo, because now that it's warming up, it has been growing back, and I actually decided to move it upstairs into the warmer, brighter area of my house, and it is just, it has so many new growth points, lots of new leaves coming in, and the variegation is just getting more and more pronounced, more and more beautiful as time goes by. So I find myself really spending a lot of extra time like absorbing in the beauty of this plant. Like, I can't walk by this plant without spending an extra 20 seconds staring at it, examining it. It really is just such a beauty. So that's why it's on this list. My next favorite has to be Philodendron Giganteum Variegated. And okay, I know. This is a plant that I talk about probably too often on my channel. Y'all are probably getting sick of it by now, but I do just really, really love this plant. Like, if I had to pick 5 plants for my collection to keep forever and get rid of the rest, this would like 100% be up there. There's something about this plant that it has a really beautiful growth pattern. Like, it just looks really nice no matter where I've had it growing. I have moved this plant so many times around my household. I've propagated it a bunch, and every single time it grows back, it just looks magnificent. Like, it just, you know what I mean? All of the leaves tend to face toward the sunlight really easily, which is something I appreciate in a display plant, if you know what I mean. It always looks like it fits wherever I place this plant. But anyway, I'm getting off a little bit from the main subject line. The reason this is my favorite plant right now is because it's putting out like really incredibly beautiful leaves. So the leaves are coming in bigger and bigger, which is really exciting. The variegation is also incredibly beautiful. It's about to get another new leaf. It just put this one out like last month. So I'm really excited to see where this plant ends up. I do thoroughly enjoy like everything about it. I will say this is a thirsty sucker. It also doesn't help that I have it growing in a relatively small planter that is definitely outgrowing. There are roots coming out of the bottom, which is why I've moved it into a cover pot so I can add a lot of water at one time and not have to think about it for like 3 days. But I do find this plant to be very tolerant, very giving growth-wise, and it does just really look good no matter where I put it. So that is why it is on this list. Should we just set this back here for dramatic effect? Yeah. See? Even just setting it here on the shelf, you would think it's been growing there forever. It looks amazing. It looks amazing! And if you want a statement plant somewhere in your house and you're not sure which one to go for, that is your answer. The next plant might be a little bit of a shocking one, especially if you've watched any of my most difficult plants videos, but Philodendron rugosum. It's also called a pigskin philodendron because the leaves have this really beautiful, leathery, football-y looking texture. It really is just unlike any other plant I've personally ever seen, especially face to face. And wow, these leaves, oh, this is a plant that I will say has taken me a while to acclimate into its environment, but now that it's acclimated, like, okay, let me say, it grew so slow for maybe like a year there. I think it's been about a year since I put it onto this wood plank, but it has, I would say probably 6 months after I got it potted into this situation in this planter with this wood trellis kind of thing, it has started popping out growth. So I would say it's doing well now. I feel pretty confident saying that because it has popped out a lot of new leaves and the leaves are beginning to get a lot bigger. Like this one hasn't even hardened off yet and it's much bigger than any other leaf on the plant. So that's always really fun and exciting when a plant starts doing that. I do think that the fact that it's turning springtime has helped this plant. It has warmed up in my house. So I do think it definitely prefers a warmer environment, but yeah, I just think this plant is so beautiful, and especially how I have it displayed here, I just think it really makes a statement. This is a plant that not only looks good from like far away, like even as you get closer and closer to this plant and notice more of the details on each leaf, the texture on the leaves, it's a very, very fun plant, especially in a more warm environment. That's been really, really exciting. I just love this plant, Philodendron rugosum. And I'm sorry, it's been kind of like, woo, woo. This one is a little bit heavy, but the next plant I want to talk about are my carnivorous plants, but specifically Pinguiculas. So I do just kind of have them all potted up here in this bog situation set up, which I did put together in this video if you're interested in watching. But a lot of these plants did go through a winter dormancy and they are just waking up for spring. So honestly, my Pinguiculas were probably the first sign to me that it really was getting warmer and turning springtime. Like sometimes as a human, it's a little bit difficult to perceive those seasonal changes, especially when it's just like a few degrees here and there every day or a few days or so. But two of my Pinguiculas in here are actually blooming. So I believe this purple flower here is a Pinguicula esseriana. No, but I also have another one here that's also starting to bloom. Yeah, it has been really, really exciting to watch this happen. Some Pinguiculas during winter do go through a dormancy period where they turn into, like, they look a lot like succulents. Through the winter, they'll kind of grow back, but they will turn into very succulent, like echeveria looking plants, which is really cool. And then they wake up for summertime, lose that kind of succulent look, and get the big, wide, broad, sticky leaves to trap their prey. For most of mine, it is fungus gnats. It has been really fun to watch these bloom, so I get a lot of enjoyment out of these, especially after the dormancy period when things start to bloom. It's just so exciting, and a lot of these have actually really, really beautiful blooms. I love that they're just kind of like a stick, a weird looking stick, and then a big flower on top. I love that. When I see my first Pinguicula bud, I'm like, it's spring! I don't need the groundhog to tell me it's spring. My Pinguicula's already told me. Next is a Monstera, specifically my Monstera Sport Variegated. This is a plant that you may be able to find at like a big box store, you know, anywhere that sells like mass-produced plants. Specifically, I'm talking about the one in my kids' bathroom. It's just growing in so beautifully in this spot. It's filling in the space perfectly. It seems like it's really enjoying being in this bathroom, and this plant does get east light. in addition to some grow bulb light, but definitely the last few months, it's just popped out 2 new leaves. This was just a top cut I took from that sport mutated Monstera I found at Lowe's. So yeah, this has been a really exciting plant to watch grow, and I think it looks really pretty. I love that, especially after it's really cold for winter and kind of slows down growth-wise. Come springtime, when it warms up, it pops out new leaves like nobody's business. It has already put out, it's on its 2nd leaf this warm season, even though it's technically only been spring for a few weeks now, but the newest leaf is still hardening off, which like this leaf is going to be huge. They've all been fenestrated. As these leaves harden off and get bigger and bigger, the variegation on them becomes more and more pronounced. So right now where this leaf hasn't completely hardened off, you can't really see the like limey yellow variegation that a sport Monstera sometimes has, which it's fun for me day to day to be like, oh, I need to go check that plant and see if I can see the variegation yet. It's just kind of something to look forward to. It keeps my days a little bit interesting because each day that I can see the variegation a little more and more pronounced, it's so exciting. It is so exciting. So that's why I love this plant, especially in the springtime. And if you're interested, I will definitely keep you posted on how these leaves turn out. Where sport variegated Monsteras, if you're not finding them yourself at a big box store, they can be really freaking expensive. It might be a plant that's worth a little bit of a splurge because it is so fun every single time it puts out a new leaf. Yes. Oh, Peperomia Hoffmanii, which overall, I just really enjoy this plant, and I feel a lot of pride in this plant, probably because oh gosh, I've had this for almost 2 years now, and for a long time there, I really struggled with it. Like, now that maybe it has acclimated a little bit, we've each given and taken a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've given it a little bit of extra care. It has probably acclimated to the environment to tolerate a little bit less than it normally ideally would. It has turned into just such a beautiful plant. I've chopped this back so many times. It was really long a couple of months ago. You may have seen a couple of my shorts talking about this plant and propagating the cuts I took, but outside of all of that, what makes me really happy about this one this time of year especially, this year especially, is the fact that since I cut it, it has popped multiple growth points from each of the stems, which is exactly what I've been hoping for, because I think actually in past videos, I've talked about how this has been a little bit bald up top. You can see it is filling in. It's filling in. A lot of the different little node axillary buds have activated and grown. Here's a new stem since I chopped the plant, but also there's a new stem coming off of that one and another just below that. Like, it really is thanking me, I think, for chopping it back and also giving it a little bit of a better environment, and also, like, of course, the fact that it's warming up and a little bit brighter generally in my house doesn't hurt. It's actually a big benefit of springtime. I've been saying it so much. Springtime is my favorite time of year to be a plant keeper because our plants reward us like this. So this has been really cool, really fun, and I'm like just so happy that all of the time I've put into this plant trying to figure out its care is finally paying off. So it's been a really fun one, and I love, especially now, how full and lush and like, I don't know, it's juicy looking, you know, and I love that in a plant. Let's just stick this here for now. Cute. Another plant I don't want to bring down here right now, but is definitely on this list, are Pilia peperomioides. This plant, how do I say this? There's definitely a, Kim, you're such a little menace. For me, there is definitely a from struggling to favorite pipeline. Any plant really that finds its way from the struggling, I kind of almost hate it because it's really stressful or going through a lot of issues right now category, finds its way into my favorites list if it can overcome that. Pilia peperomioides is definitely one of those. Kim! Go kill the reindeer somewhere else. This plant, I accidentally dropped and the stem snapped. So that's why mine is growing all wonky. It's kind of a little shape, but it has healed itself. I just kind of left it to do its thing and paid a little extra attention to it to hopefully, I don't know, I pampered it a little bit. I do definitely feel like I've been pampering it a little bit, but all that hard work has paid off because this year especially, the leaves are growing in so beautiful, like seriously so beautiful. I've always kind of had a hard time with this plant, even outside of breaking this stem in particular. I've always kind of struggled with these because I feel like my, the round leaves would come in kind of like bowl shaped, but now they're growing in flat, how a Peperomia plant's leaves should. It just feels good to know that this plant was once at one end of the spectrum and now it's definitely up there at the top of the spectrum among probably some of my top best looking, most like eye-catching plants. It also has started popping out babies again. I have an additional pot of some of its earliest babies right next to it, which I just really enjoy seeing. Everything's just growing in really beautifully and I love this plant. It makes me so happy to take care of this plant, especially now that it's doing well. I'm like, okay, I see the beauty in it now. Whereas before I maybe didn't a little bit because we were struggling. So I don't know, it's just kind of a testament to not giving up on plants that you really enjoy, because although it might not be beautiful, it might not be perfect now, which don't get me wrong, mine also is, this plant isn't perfect, but that's also what makes me love it about it, you know, like we have a little bit of history and that's something I really love about plant keeping. Like getting a new plant is fun, but building a history, building a relationship with a plant is like top tier for me. Top tier. What plant are we on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're now on plant number 8, which is actually down here. It's my, right here. Philodendron Florida Ghost. Mine hasn't looked very ghosty for a while now. I think mine has reverted. This new leaf is coming in a little bit lighter, but not as minty as the leaves on a Florida Ghost really like should, but I do still love this. Okay. For a while, the fact that my plant wasn't producing those super minty leaves kind of bothered me and made me regret spending money on this plant. I'm like realizing how much I actually really love the look of this plant outside of the like minty leaf factor. I just think it's a really good looking plant. I do really love deep burgundy red stems that contrast with these really, I don't know, they're just like really big leaves, really, what's the word I'm looking for? Really, I don't even know what word to describe them, but I do really like the shape of these leaves. They're very, not stark. Stark isn't the word. Let me know if you know what word I'm thinking of, but they do just really contrast with the overall green of the plant. It is a very space-filling plant, which again, back to the Monstera and the Giganteum over here. I love a plant that kind of fills in whatever space I decide to put it in. The one that's popping into my head right now is from Fern's first plant collection walkthrough video she did this year. You should go look at the video. It's like right at the beginning, but see the plant I'm talking about because it is the same plant as this. She has her sitting on top of some cabinets and it's kind of like grown up and then down. And now it's like kind of growing up again and it looks really beautiful. It really fills in the space nicely, even though the top of that cabinet like maybe isn't the most ideal place for this kind of plant. That's what I'm saying. I appreciate a plant that kind of wherever you throw it and toss it and need a plant to fill in the space, it's going to look good. And this is another one that fits that bill. There's nothing really special about this springtime that's making me love this plant extra because I know I'm talking like springy plant faves, but this is one that just is consistently at the top of my favorite plants list, even though it's one I initially was pretty like feeling pretty down about because it wasn't growing exactly how I had envisioned it in my mind. Color-wise, yeah. That was a little bit of a tangent, but I don't know. I love this plant. It's like kind of weird, kind of cool, fills in a space nicely. Yeah, and it is also getting a new leaf here. And look at how bright red this stem is. Like how these stems grow in and then kind of darken over time as they mature reminds me of color changing nail polish. If you ever used that growing up, me and my friends always painted our nails with this color changing nail polish that it looked clear, but then when you got in the sun, it like turned bright. It's like that kind of same, it gives me those same kind of feelings, but it's obviously a little bit of a longer term process. I just think it's really cool. It's really cool. It's really fun to see the changes in the plant over time. So Philodendron, Florida Ghost. Last plant that I'm going to talk about today is a little bit random and definitely not like a house plant, but this spaghetti squash plant. I sprouted this from a seed. Okay, quick little tangent. I know you're here because of plants, and that has been my primary topic on my channel, but I do think I'm at a point in my life where I've kind of said a lot of what I can say about plants, and I don't want to keep forcing myself to make content that I don't necessarily feel passionate about, which, okay, don't get me wrong. I clearly still feel passionate about my plants, but I just kind of feel like my systems and processes and habits plant care wise have stayed the same. And I'm not trying to be super redundant and repeat past videos I've made. Maybe this isn't the best video to say that in because I make favorite plant videos like 5 times a year, but anyway, I digress. One of the newest ventures I'm going to be doing are what I eat in the day, also workout type videos, maybe some hike with me vlogs, camping vlogs, that kind of thing. Things I really do feel passionate about and are doing in my daily life. Things have just gotten a little bit too monotonous for me, okay? Anyway, I'm branching out, and less than 2 weeks ago, I started to film one of these what I eat in a days, and for dinner, I was going to make spaghetti squash because that is one of mine and Ryan's favorite meals. We eat it once a week. We freaking love that. But anyway, I cut into this spaghetti squash, which I had sitting in my pantry for maybe a little bit too long, and some of the seeds inside had started to sprout. I didn't end up making spaghetti squash that night because clearly the spaghetti squash had gone bad. So I just cooked the spaghetti squash and fed it to my chickens. But before cooking it, I did save a few of the seeds from the plant that hadn't sprouted yet. And in 6 days, it had sprouted. The plant was actually a lot bigger and the roots were actually a lot bigger than I ever expected they would be in a week, in less than a week. 6 days, you guys. It has only been 5 days since I noticed the roots of that plant and decided to pot it up into this cup, and it clearly has gotten so much bigger. It's starting to get the squash looking leaves. So I'm going to pot this up again. You can also see a lot of root growth down here. As someone that grew up with a veggie garden, I am just getting like a whole new appreciation for that by watching this plant growth day by day inside here in my house. I'll definitely move this outside another week from now. I'm just not totally prepared to do that right now, but it has been really fun to see just how fast this has grown. And you know, it's exciting. It's really, really exciting. Like, I love ornamental plants. I love my house plants, but this one gives me like a whole new reason to grow a plant, I guess, which is really exciting for me. So it's just fun to switch it up and see what else is out there. Not only fun, like to see the new growth happen, but it also gives me a little bit of extra excitement and anticipation for fall time, to hopefully be able to grow a squash from this. I mean, we will see what happens. Obviously, I don't know what's gonna happen between now and like October when squash are ready to be harvested, but yeah, I mean, it's just something to look forward to and work toward. So this plant makes me really, really happy. Every single day, I'm like, Ryan, look at my plant. Go look at the squash. It's a little bit floppy because it does need to be repotted and maybe I need to water it, but I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I really have. These roots are getting so big, so cool. That's why this plant is the last one on my favorite spring planty list. So yeah, that's my list. There were 9 plants. if I'm remembering correctly. Of course, I could go on and like talk about each one of my individual plants. These are the top of the top for me right now, and plants that every single day I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to go check that plant. I need to spend a little extra 20 seconds looking and gushing over this plant because it brings me a lot of joy for various different reasons compared to my other plants, which I also love, but they're maybe just not popping off as much right now. I don't pick favorites, but I kind of do. Sometimes a few of my plants just outperform the rest, you know? So they're extra fun for the time being. If you didn't before, be sure to pause this video and let me know what plants are really standing out to you this time of year and why. I always get a lot of wish list plant inspiration from reading through comments of this kind of video, so I really appreciate you leaving those. That's it for this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!